This is episode 11 of the Gene Keys Golden Path Spheres series. And today we are talking about one of the most important spheres, the sphere of culture, which is tied to your Pearl sequence. And that's all about birthing prosperity into your life. And prosperity is not wealth. Prosperity is a flow, it's a balance. Yes, financial abundance is a part of the program here, but it comes in flow. It comes in, it goes out, and it also involves your spiritual life and spiritual prosperity and relational prosperity. It's every different arena of your life becomes prosperous when we can unlock this energy in the sphere of culture. And it's one place in the Gene Keys profile that I always like to kind of bring forth. So when you look at your activation sequence, right, that's in green, if you look at your profile, the first two spheres are your life's work and your evolution. And coming out of this is what's called the pathway of breakthrough. And what this tells us is when we are able to raise the frequency of the energy passing through the gene key that we have in the sphere of evolution, there is a breakthrough that happens in our life. There's an opening, an unlocking, a flood of new energy. And in the case of your evolution, it's because your evolution is this rock in your shoe, right? It's this thing that constantly comes to you to grab your attention. And when you learn how to stop being frustrated and annoyed by it, which is very human and normal, and instead use that energy in your life, we get this massive liberation of energy, which gives us a breakthrough. Now, there are two other places in the Gene Keys profile that this happens because of, in the Gene Keys, the word that we use is holographic nature of things, or hologenetic is a word that you'll hear sometimes, which I'm not going to get into the difference here, but holographic meaning that everything is encoded in everything else, or another word that we sometimes use there is the word fractal. And so what this means is it's kind of like the Hermetic principle of the law of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. In other words, these patterns are going to be reflected throughout the entire profile and indeed in your life, which is why this works. So in the Venus sequence, this happens in the sphere of your IQ and EQ area, the pathway of defense. And in the Pearl sequence, it happens here at the sphere of your culture. So coming to the other side of culture over here, we've got our vocation. If you're looking at your profile, this is culture, and then up top here is the brand. So what this tells us, going back to that breakthrough, when we raise the frequency passing through our culture, that's when we unleash all this stuck energy that was stuck inside of us, and now it begins to interact with the culture, to interact with the environment. And when that happens, this pathway of growth really takes hold, and there is this giant quantum shift that happens in one's life. And that's why I say that the sphere of culture is so important. I'm not sure why I did this in like this little tiny area up on the board. Sorry about that. Okay, so next up is the culture tells you organizational structure, to use like fancy business words. And essentially what this means is, how are you designed to fit into a work unit, if you will? So when you look at your culture, by looking at the lines of your culture, and I have another video about this, so I'm not going to go through it right now. You can track down that video with the lines of culture. It tells you exactly how you are designed. Are you designed to work by yourself? Are you designed to work in a partnership? Are you designed to work in a small group? Are you designed to affect the whole world? A massive team, a small team? You know, all of this information we can glean from the sphere of our culture. Now, when we have the right organizational structure and we increase frequency through whatever gene key you have in the sphere of your culture, what starts to happen is your fractal forms around you. So what this sphere serves as is kind of like a beacon. When that raises, people, situations, things all of a sudden get magnetized into your field, and they are going to be exactly in line with what you need, and they're going to resonate deeply with you. And this is what's called your fractal. So there are three kind of very, like, trace the lines all the way back, right, to the very beginning. There are three kind of original fractals, if you will. And a good way to think about this is, number one is the Christ fractal, right? This is the path of compassion and sacrifice and humanity, essentially. And there are particular gene keys that associate with each of these. The next is the Buddha fractal, and the Buddha is the path of wisdom. It's the path of non-attachment. And then the third fractal is the fractal of Hermes Trismegistus. So this is the path of alchemy, of transmutation. And so when you raise the frequency passing through the sphere of your culture, other people that are on a similar line to you, and I feel resonance with all of these, right? So it's not like you don't feel resonance with the others if you're on a certain fractal. It's just that naturally you're going to be drawn in a certain direction. And this isn't something that you need to think about. Your awareness takes care of it. The universe takes care of it. But what starts to happen is, like, exactly the people that you need. So if you need, like, somebody to help with marketing, boom, all of a sudden that person just appears in your world, and there they are. If you feel like this real deep longing for a partner so that you can continue to foster your growth and your service out in the world, boom, all of a sudden that person materializes in our life. So you can see, like, how important this sphere is and unlocking this energy to call in the help. But the thing is, the help doesn't come until after you take the leap. That's the part that's hard. And that's why this is a path of faith, right? And a path of love. Is the universe answers after you jump. It's a reflection of you. And so the initiative is the scary part, but I promise people will start to form around you. It's really, really cool. Okay, now this ties very closely to, and we already touched on this, your brand. So you got your brand there, and we've got our culture here. Now the brand is the same gene key as your life's work, but it takes on a different flavor. It takes on a different energy. I've got videos on this also, but essentially, where you start, if you're following the golden path as it's recommended, you start in your life's work. And when you come back to the brand, it's the very last sphere that you come to, not including the pearl, which is a different conversation entirely, because it's not it's a gift from God, if you will. But the brand, so we come back to it, but we are a very different version of ourselves because our self has left the building. Again, we'll save that for another time. But the brand and the culture are intimately linked together. So what the culture helps us to do is adjust our message until we find the resonance with our fractal. So this doesn't mean that we change who we are, okay? It doesn't mean that we change our message at its core, right? It's still like what you feel called to share is what you feel called to share. However, we do need to align or find the right language, the words, the codes that unlock people and that serve to call your fractal into you. So what we have to do is just tinker and play with the message until it finds resonance. And so your brand is your tone, right? It's the way that you move through the world, and it can be adjusted as you see the culture respond, and then as your brand shifts, the culture will move. In other words, this is like a feedback system. And we need both of these. We can't look at one independent of the other. When you do, those are the times when you make everything, right? You go and you spend weeks or months or years even, like building a website and a program and all of these things. And you're like, yes, this is it. This is the message. This is my brand. And then you put it out and it's crickets. And it's because you didn't take into account the culture. You didn't raise this gene key. Now, speaking of, obviously, you guys know, or maybe not obviously, but we've got the shadow, the gift, and the city for each one of our gene keys, okay? And the gift, actually, let's start with the shadow. The shadow of your culture is going to repel people. So for me, I have the shadow of discord here, which is the 13th gene key. So if I am not able to hear wisdom, if I am not able to see love, if I am not able to be empathic, then I end up in this discord. I end up thinking that the world is falling apart. I'm pessimistic, everything's getting worse, and that repels the culture. That repels my fractal. It's not going to allow them to come into me, okay? When I get up into the gift frequency, what that does is the opposite. It's going to attract your fractal line and exactly the right people that you need to do the next thing that you need to do. And for me, this is discernment. So when I am able to discern with eyes and ears of love, when I am able to see behind the words, when I am able to help guide people towards capital T truth, then my fractal is going to be attracted to me and they're going to show up. And this is exactly what happened, right? I've got a group called the Synarchy. It's got 330 or so people that are in it. We talk about the gene keys, we talk about business, we talk about God, we talk about personal development, and all of that stemmed from me raising my frequency. And I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in joining us in that group. I'd certainly love to have you. And then the city is an interesting one, as it always is in the city, but what that leads to is a merge. Right? It's like you and your fractal become one. We come together. We recognize that this barrier that we feel is not the real thing. And I don't need to go too far down that rabbit hole right now. Okay, next up is that your culture, as the traditional kind of meaning of the word might suggest, ties really intimately to your mythology and your ancestors. I didn't realize this until I did the Star Pearl. So just a quick plug for the Star Pearl. I get nothing for it, but I've been doing it for the past 7 or 8 months and it has been really, really impactful. So that's another alternative, right? We've got the Golden Path, which is Activation Venus and Pearl. And then this new teaching is the Star Pearl, which is kind of a transcendent fourth piece of the puzzle. I do think it's incredibly valuable to have the experience of walking through the Golden Path as well. But nonetheless, the first kind of bit of work that I did in the Star Pearl was on a triangle called the Fortune of Our Fathers. And I had the Sphere of Culture is part of my work, and it tied a lot to understanding or unpacking our past and our ancestry and where we've come from and our mythology. So mythology is important because it allows you to step into the role of hero or heroine within your own life. So what that means is it gives me a little bit of distance, a little bit of space. I can begin to see my life like a story that is unfolding, and I'm less attached to every single thing that is happening. And with that distance, I can be more heroic. I can realize and remember what really matters, and I don't get as bogged down in the details, and I don't have as much fear. And so your culture is a really good place to dig into what myths do you resonate with, because every myth tells us an archetypal story that we contain. And I think it's important to realize that myths almost always end in happily ever after, because that's how your story is going to end. And if it doesn't feel that way right now, it's because you're still caught up in the story. But I promise it will come to the other side. So this is just a plug to see what mythology resonates with you. So for me, I've got Viking blood. My family traces all the way back. I have the lineage back to the year 1000, and I've definitely got some Norse blood in me. So that resonates really deeply with me. Maybe it's Greek mythology, maybe it's Toltec. I mean, whatever calls to you. And then also your ancestors. So taking a look at your lineage, your fractal, both spiritual and blood, and your family lines, and looking for the gold. I know many of us had difficult upbringings, but there is gold to be mined. And those of you that know my story know that it's not easy for me to say that. So I feel you if you're one of these people, but there is something there that is going to help you grow and shift and changed. So I think that's good for the culture right now. Actually, one more thing. Last thing is that it's really based on a vibratory match. So what this means is your culture is always working. It's just going to call in whatever matches you. So if you are moving through the lower frequencies, all the people, all the situations, all the things that are around you are going to match that frequency. In other words, if you are doing something solely for money, then you're going to have other people show up around you where that's what they're driven by and that's what they do out in the world. And then you'll be able to leverage. So again, culture, brand, this here is the pathway of growth, and it's the one place in the Gene Keys profile that you can leverage this pathway regardless of frequency. Meaning you can grow, you can make a lot of money at a lower vibratory match because you're going to get all the help that you need. However, it's going to fall apart, and I've lived this and I can speak to you about it directly. So we need to make sure that the seed of whatever it is you intend to grow is at a high vibration, or in a matter of time, things are going to blow up, things are going to fall apart. It's not going to be all that fun for you. Again, from experience. So this is the sphere of culture. We've got the sphere of brand and pearl left to do. So stick around, subscribe if you want to see those. Obviously, I've done 10 other episodes, which is walking all the way through. I started with activation sequence, jumping on each of the spheres. I've also got videos for each of the lines. Within the community, everything is organized. The Synarchy community I mentioned earlier makes it a lot easier to find things instead of poking around through YouTube. However, you can do it that way too. You know, that's totally fine with me if you don't feel called to come in there. Lastly, if this is something that you're struggling with and you want some deep guidance, I do one-to-one work with people. So I'll put that link in there too. No pressure there. Things are really humming for me right now. So this is, you know, take this, do something with it, right? Shift your life, get out of here, get into here and take action. All right, y'all, lots of love.